Commander James Rhodes had survived countless space battles, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer terror of an uncontrolled descent through an alien atmosphere. His survey vessel, the Pathfinder, screamed through purple-tinged clouds as warning systems blared their final protests before failing completely. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered, wrestling with unresponsive controls. The ship's quantum drive had malfunctioned during a routine scan of the unexplored planet designated Artemis 7, leaving him spiraling toward its surface with nothing but emergency thrusters and a prayer. The ground rushed up to meet him, a landscape of crystalline forests that sparkled like diamonds under twin moons. James managed one final course correction before impact, aiming for what appeared to be a clearing among the towering crystal trees. The crash sent him flying against his restraints, and darkness claimed him. When consciousness returned, James found himself staring up at a canopy of translucent crystal branches that refracted starlight into rainbow patterns. His head throbbed, but a quick self-assessment revealed no major injuries. The same couldn't be said for the Pathfinder. The ship was a twisted wreck of metal and carbon fiber, beyond any hope of repair. His neural implant flickered to life, displaying a steady stream of environmental data. The atmosphere was breathable, if thin, and local gravity was about 0.8 Earth standard. Temperature hovered around a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius. At least he wouldn't die immediately. James had just finished salvaging what he could from the wreckage when he heard it, a sound like crystal wind chimes carried on the breeze. He turned slowly, hand instinctively moving to his sidearm, and found himself looking up, and up, and up. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her skin a mesmerizing swirl of opalescent colors that shifted in the starlight. Her features were striking yet alien, high cheekbones, luminescent eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies, and hair that floated as if suspended in water. The being wore armor that appeared to be grown rather than forged, crystal plates flowing like liquid over a form that was undeniably feminine yet powerfully built. "Well," she said in perfect English, her voice musical and amused, "you're certainly smaller than expected." Her head tilted as she studied him. "Though I suppose that makes sense, given the size of your vessel." James kept his hand near his weapon but didn't draw it. "You speak English?" "We speak all languages," she replied, taking a step closer. Despite her size, she moved with impossible grace. "The real question is whether you can speak in a way that matters." "I'm Commander James Rhodes of the Earth Exploration Fleet," he said, standing his ground despite every instinct telling him to back away from this gorgeous giant. "My ship malfunctioned during a survey mission." "I am Astrid, First Blade of the Valkyrian Guard," she responded, now close enough that he had to crane his neck to maintain eye contact. "And you, James Rhodes of Earth, have crashed into the heart of our sacred hunting grounds." Her hand moved faster than he could track, plucking his weapon from its holster before he could react. She held it between 2 fingers, examining it like a curious child might inspect a toy. "Such primitive tools," she mused. "Yet you survived the crash. Perhaps there's more to you than size alone." "I'd appreciate having that back," James said, keeping his voice steady. Astrid's laugh was like crystal bells in the wind. "Brave too. Interesting." She handed the weapon back, her fingers brushing his hand in a way that sent electricity up his arm. "The Council will want to see you, of course. We rarely get visitors, especially ones so compact. I don't suppose you have communications equipment?" "My people will be looking for me." "Oh, we have many things," Astrid said, starting to walk away with the clear expectation that he would follow. "The question is whether you're worthy of using them. Among my people, worth is proven, not assumed." James watched her for a moment, considering his options. He could try to survive alone on this crystal world, hoping for rescue, or he could follow this fascinating giant and perhaps find a way home. Plus, he had to admit, there was something compelling about her that went beyond her obvious physical presence. "Coming, little one?" Astrid called over her shoulder, those galaxy eyes twinkling with mischief. James sighed and started after her. "I'm actually above average height on Earth," he said, jogging to keep up with her long strides. "How adorable," she replied, and her laughter echoed through the crystal forest, setting the trees themselves to singing. The Valkyrian city took James's breath away. Crystal spires rose like frozen waterfalls, their surfaces alive with shifting colors that responded to the movements of their inhabitants. Platforms and walkways floated without visible support, and everywhere he looked, towering figures moved with fluid grace that made him feel clumsy by comparison. "Your people built all this?" he asked Astrid, who seemed amused by his wonderment. "Built? No, little one. We grew it." She placed her hand against a nearby crystal column, and ripples of light spread from her touch. "The crystals are alive, in their way. We simply encourage them to grow as we need." They drew many curious looks as they made their way through the city. James noticed that while all the Valkyrians were tall, none quite matched Astrid's commanding presence. Some wore similar crystalline armor, while others dressed in flowing garments that seemed woven from starlight. "The council chambers," Astrid announced as they approached a structure that resembled a blooming flower made of crystal and light. "Try not to let their size intimidate you too much," says the woman who's been calling me little one for the past hour, James retorted, earning another of those musical laughs that were becoming dangerously addictive. The council consisted of 3 Valkyrians who made even Astrid look small. They sat upon thrones that seemed to grow directly from the crystal floor, their forms radiating an authority that filled the chamber. An Earth human, the central figure spoke, her voice resonating through James's bones. "So far from home. And so, diminutive." "High Council," James said, bowing slightly. "I am Commander James Rhodes. My ship Dash." "Yes, yes," another counselor waved her hand dismissively. "Astrid has informed us of your accident. The question before us is not how you came to be here, but what we should do with you now that you are." "I only seek to contact my people and arrange transport home," James said. The third counselor leaned forward, her galaxy eyes intense. "Nothing is freely given among the Valkyrian people, Earth human. Worth must be proven through action. The trial of the hunt approaches," the first counselor said. "If you wish to earn the right to use our communication array, you will participate." James glanced at Astrid, who kept her face carefully neutral. "What does this trial entail?" "Only the hunting of a crystal behemoth," the second counselor said with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Surely a brave Earth commander won't balk at such a simple task." "The behemoth's hide can deflect energy weapons," the third added. "Its roar can shatter bones. Its very presence disrupts technology. Many Valkyrian warriors have fallen attempting to hunt one. And you expect me to succeed where warriors 3 times my size have failed?" James asked. "Oh no," the first counselor's smile matched her colleagues. "We expect you to fail spectacularly. But at least it will be entertaining." "I will hunt with him," Astrid suddenly declared, causing murmurs among the gathered observers. "You would risk your position as First Blade?" the second counselor asked. "I would test a theory," Astrid replied. "Size is not always the measure of worth." The council conferred briefly before the central figure nodded. "So be it. The hunt begins at first moonrise tomorrow. If you survive, Earth human, we will discuss your return home. If not..." She shrugged expressively. Outside the chamber, James rounded on Astrid. "Why did you do that? Risk your position for me?" She looked down at him, her expression softer than he'd yet seen it. "Because you intrigue me, James Rhodes. You show no fear despite being surrounded by beings who could break you with a careless gesture. You maintain dignity while being literally looked down upon. And..." She reached out to trace a finger along his jaw. "There is something in your eyes that speaks of depths your size belies." James caught her hand before she could pull it back, marveling at how his entire hand barely wrapped around her finger. "I won't let you regret this." Her galaxy eyes sparkled. "See that you don't, little one. Now come, we have much to prepare, and I need to teach you how to hunt something that considers beings my size to be prey." They spent the remaining daylight hours in preparation. Astrid showed him the traditional crystal weapons they would use, spears and bows that somehow felt weightless despite their size. She taught him how the crystal forests could be used for cover, how to read the light patterns that might warn of a behemoth's approach. "The key," she explained as they practiced movement techniques, "is to understand that size truly doesn't matter here. The behemoth doesn't care if you're 8 feet tall or 5, you're still smaller than it is. What matters is intelligence, coordination, and—" She moved suddenly, sweeping his legs out from under him and catching him before he hit the ground, adaptability. James found himself cradled in arms strong enough to crush him, looking up into those mesmerizing eyes. "I'm starting to think you just enjoy manhandling me," he said. "Merely testing your reflexes," she replied with a grin, setting him gently on his feet. "Though I must admit, you are rather satisfyingly portable." As the twin moons began to rise, casting their purple light across the crystal landscape, Astrid grew more serious. "Tomorrow will be dangerous," she said. "The behemoth is no mere beast. It is an apex predator that has evolved to hunt in these crystal forests. Even with 2 of us. We'll succeed," James said firmly. "Because we have something the behemoth doesn't." "And what's that?" "A human's stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds, and a Valkyrian warrior's strength to back it up." Astrid's laugh this time was softer, almost tender. "Perhaps there is hope for you yet, little one. Come, you should rest. Tomorrow, we hunt." The crystal forest was different in the purple light of dawn, more dangerous somehow. James moved silently alongside Astrid, both of them tracking the signs of their quarry. The behemoth had passed through recently, shattered crystal trees and deep gouges in the ground marked its path. "Remember," Astrid whispered, her voice barely audible above the singing crystals, "the behemoth can sense vibrations through the crystal networks. Step only where I step." James followed her lead, noting how she placed her feet on patches of soil between the crystal growths. Despite their size difference, they moved in surprising harmony, complementing each other's movements as if they'd hunted together for years rather than hours. The first indication of danger came as a subtle change in the crystal song, a discordant note that made James's teeth ache. He touched Astrid's arm, pointing to where the crystals were beginning to vibrate. She nodded, immediately understanding, and they took cover behind a massive crystal formation. The crystal behemoth emerged from the forest like a living mountain. Its body was a perfect fusion of crystalline growth and alien flesh, each movement sending rainbow refractions across the landscape. It was easily the size of a small dropship, with multiple limbs that ended in wickedly sharp crystal points. "Well," James breathed, "now I know why you weren't particularly impressed by my size." Astrid's quiet laugh tickled his ear. "Having second thoughts, little one? Actually, I'm thinking our size difference might be an advantage." He outlined his plan quickly, watching her galaxy eyes widen with each detail. "That is either brilliant or suicidal," she said when he finished. "Possibly both. Sometimes the best plans are." She studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "You continue to surprise me, James Rhodes. Very well, let us try this human strategy of yours." They split up, with Astrid moving to draw the behemoth's attention while James circled around behind it. The massive creature detected her immediately, its crystalline body pulsing with predatory interest. Astrid stood her ground, her own crystal weapons catching and reflecting light in mesmerizing patterns. "Come then," she called out, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Show me if you're worthy to hunt a first blade." The behemoth charged, its crystal limbs scoring deep gouges in the ground. Astrid moved like liquid starlight, dodging its attacks with practiced grace while leading it exactly where they needed it to go. James watched in awe. She was magnificent, a warrior goddess in her element. When the behemoth was in position, James enacted his part of the plan. Using his smaller size to advantage, he scrambled up one of the larger crystal formations, unnoticed by the creature focused on the more obvious threat. The crystal bow Astrid had given him felt alive in his hands, responding to his touch as if eager to prove itself. "Hey ugly," he shouted, drawing the behemoth's attention upward. "Let's test that hide of yours." He loosed 3 arrows in rapid succession, not at the behemoth itself, but at the crystal trees surrounding it. The arrows struck with perfect precision, creating a resonance that built upon itself. The behemoth's own crystalline structure began to vibrate in sympathy, causing it obvious distress. Astrid seized the moment, driving her crystal spear into a spot where the vibrations had created a stress fracture. The behemoth's roar of pain shattered several nearby trees, but the damage was done. Working in perfect synchronization, James and Astrid pressed their advantage, he maintaining the devastating resonance while she struck at weakened points. The end came swiftly after that. The behemoth, its crystalline form compromised by the continuous vibrations, succumbed to a final, precise strike from Astrid. As it fell, its body began to break apart into thousands of small, perfect crystals that scattered across the forest floor like starlight. "That," Astrid said, breathing heavily as she joined James by his perch, "was unlike any hunt I've ever experienced." "Good different or bad different?" She reached up, plucking him from his position and bringing him to eye level. "You used our own environment against one of our most dangerous predators. You turned your size into an advantage rather than a limitation. And you trusted me to play my part without hesitation. Is that a good different then?" James asked, very aware of how she was still holding him, their faces unusually close. "It is, fascinating," she replied softly. "You are fascinating, James Rhodes of Earth." Her galaxy eyes searched his face. "I find myself wondering what other surprises you might hold." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities. Then a horn sounded from the direction of the city, breaking the spell. Astrid set him down gently, though her hand lingered on his shoulder. "The council will be waiting," she said. "Though I suspect this isn't quite the entertainment they were expecting. Will they honor their agreement?" "They must. You've more than proven your worth." She paused, then added more quietly, "To all of us." As they gathered trophies from the behemoth and prepared to return to the city, James caught Astrid looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What is it?" "I'm beginning to understand," she said, "that worth truly does come in all sizes. And that some of the universe's most remarkable things come in unexpected packages." James smiled up at her. "Careful, someone might think you're growing fond of your little human." Her answering smile was radiant. "Perhaps I am, James Rhodes. Perhaps I am." The celebration of their successful hunt was interrupted by chaos. Warning crystals throughout the city began pulsing with angry red light, their usual melodic song replaced by a harsh, discordant drone. James watched as the Valkyrian warriors, including Astrid, snapped to attention. "Something's wrong," Astrid said, her galaxy eyes narrowed. "The defense network hasn't activated like this in generations." Before anyone could respond, the sky erupted with light. Through gaps in the crystal canopy, James could see massive ships entering the atmosphere, dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They were nothing like his own people's ships, nor did they match Valkyrian crystal technology. "The Void Collective," one of the council members spat the words like a curse. "They've finally found us." "I thought they were just stories," Astrid said, her hand unconsciously moving to shield James as debris began falling from the aerial battle above. "Tales to frighten young warriors." "No," the head counselor's voice was grim. "They are very real. A race of conquerors who destroy everything they cannot dominate. We hid from them for centuries, using our crystal technology to cloak our world. What changed? James asked, his military training already analyzing the situation, counting ships, noting attack patterns. They must have detected your crash, another counselor said accusingly. Your primitive vessel's signature led them right to us. But James was shaking his head. No, look at their deployment pattern. These aren't scout ships finding something by accident, this is a planned invasion force. They've known you were here. They were just waiting for the right moment. Astrid looked down at him with sudden understanding. The resonance from our hunt. The behemoth's death cry would have caused a massive crystal surge. Temporarily disrupting your planet's cloaking field, James finished. We did this. Together. Instead of anger, Astrid's face showed fierce determination. Then together, we'll fix it. The next few hours were a blur of activity. While the Valkyrian defense forces engaged the first wave of Void collective ships, James and Astrid worked to formulate a plan. His military experience combined with her knowledge of crystal technology led them to a daring possibility. It's risky, James said, pointing to the holographic display they'd created. We'd need to get into their command ship, access their network, and upload the virus. All while avoiding detection by beings we know nothing about. Not nothing, Astrid corrected. The stories say they're massive, even larger than us. They despise anything smaller than themselves, seeing all other life as worthy only of elimination or enslavement. Well, that's just rude, James quipped, earning a small smile despite the dire situation. But it might work to our advantage. They'll be looking for Valkyrian warriors, not a small human running around their systems. You mean us, Astrid said firmly. I won't let you face this alone. Astrid, you're literally twice my height. Stealth isn't really an option for you on their ship. Her galaxy eyes flashed. And who will protect you if you're discovered? Who will reach the higher access points? Who will? She paused, emotion breaking through her warrior's facade. Who will ensure you return safely? James reached up, taking her much larger hand in his. We've proven size doesn't matter when we work together. Trust me one more time. She knelt down to his level, her free hand gently cupping his face. I'm beginning to think I would trust you with anything, James Rhodes. The tender moment was broken by another explosion rocking the city. Through the crystal walls, they could see more Void collective ships descending, their weapons carving dark swaths through the beautiful crystal forests. Your plan is approved, the head counselor announced, approaching with several warriors carrying crystal weapons. Though I never thought I'd say this, the fate of our world now rests in very small hands. Good thing they're capable hands, Astrid defended, standing protectively near James. The next phase required precise timing. Using salvaged parts from James's crashed ship combined with Valkyrian crystal technology, they created a hybrid device that could interface with the Void collective systems. The hard part would be getting it, and James, onto their command ship. Ready? Astrid asked as they prepared for their part of the mission. She had helped him modify his environment suit with crystal components, making him nearly invisible to standard scanners. Ready, James replied, checking his equipment one last time. Try not to worry too much about your little human. She grabbed him suddenly, pulling him into an embrace that would have been crushing if she hadn't been so careful. You are not just my little human. You are James Rhodes, the warrior who helped slay a crystal behemoth. The man who earned my. She paused, those galaxy eyes swirling with emotion, my everything. Before James could respond, she leaned down and kissed him. It should have been awkward given their size difference, but like everything else between them, they made it work beautifully. Now, she said, pulling back with fierce determination, let's go save both our peoples. And when this is over, we have much to discuss about overcoming physical differences. James grinned up at her, his heart racing from both the kiss and the coming battle. Survive first, flirt later? Indeed, she replied with a predatory smile. Though I expect you to survive, James Rhodes. That is an order from your first blade. As they moved into position, preparing to launch their desperate gambit against the Void Collective, James reflected that he had never felt stronger than when standing beside this magnificent giantess who had come to mean everything to him. Together, they would prove that the size of one's heart mattered far more than the size of one's body. The Void Collective's command ship loomed in the purple sky like a black hole given form. James crouched in the crystal-enhanced stealth pod, watching through the viewport as Astrid's fighter craft approached their target. Her voice came through their private channel, steady and strong. Remember, you'll have exactly 3 minutes between my distraction and the shield's recycling. After that, I'll be trapped inside with an army of size-obsessed aliens who want to destroy everything we hold dear, James finished. Just another day at the office. Your attempts at humor during life-threatening situations continue to baffle me, Astrid said, but he could hear the smile in her voice. You love it. A pause. Yes, she said softly. I do. Before he could respond, she began her attack run. The crystal-powered fighter she piloted danced through enemy fire, drawing the attention of the command ship's defense systems. James watched in awe as she demonstrated why she held the title of First Blade, her flying as graceful and deadly as her ground combat. The moment the shield flickered, James launched his pod. Being small had advantages. The Void Collective sensors were calibrated to detect Valkyrian-sized threats, not a human-scale insertion vehicle. He slipped through their defenses like a ghost. The interior of the command ship was appropriately massive, with corridors clearly designed for beings even larger than the Valkyrians. James moved silently through the shadows, using his neural interface to track the upload point Astrid's scans had identified. The few Void Collective soldiers he glimpsed confirmed the stories. They were enormous, gray-skinned beings with multiple arms and eyes that seemed to reflect the very darkness of space. In position, he whispered into his comm, beginning upload. Hurry, Astrid's voice was tense. They're bringing up additional defenses. I can't maintain the distraction much longer. James plugged the crystal hybrid device into their systems. The interface sprang to life, Valkyrian crystal technology merging with the Void Collective's dark tech. Lines of code flowed like water as the virus began its work. An alarm blared. Intruder detected in Sector 7, a booming voice announced. Deploy containment teams. They've spotted me, James reported, ducking behind a console as heavy footsteps approached. Hold on, Astrid said. I'm coming in. Negative. Stick to the plan. The virus needs time to dash. The wall beside him exploded inward as Astrid's fighter crashed through it. She leaped from the cockpit, crystal armor gleaming, looking like an avenging angel as she engaged the first wave of Void Collective soldiers. What happened to sticking to the plan? James called out, continuing to protect the upload device. I modified the plan, she replied, her crystal blades singing through the air. I decided I didn't like any plan that didn't involve protecting what's mine. The fight that followed was chaos. James used his size to advantage, darting between the legs of massive enemies to sabotage their weapons and armor. Astrid was a whirlwind of crystal and starlight, her combat skills proving that even among giants, technique trumped size. The virus reached 80% when the ship's commander arrived, a towering figure whose presence seemed to drain light from the room. So, his voice rumbled like an avalanche, the mighty Valkyrians now consort with insects. This insect just breached your command ship, James shot back. And this Valkyrian, Astrid added, stands proudly with him. The commander attacked with devastating force, but James and Astrid moved as one. Their months of hunting together, of learning each other's strengths, paid off. She provided the power, he created the openings. When the commander focused on her, James struck from below. When he tried to crush James, Astrid's blade found his weak points. Upload complete, James's neural interface announced just as they finally brought down the commander. Now comes the fun part, James said, racing back to Astrid's damaged fighter. We have about 2 minutes before dash. The ship shuddered as the virus took full effect. Throughout the Void Collective fleet, their crystal-based code began rewriting the aliens' core systems. Ships started powering down, their weapons failing as crystal resonance cascaded through their network. They barely made it back to Astrid's fighter. She cradled James protectively as they launched through the hole she'd made, the command ship falling into chaos behind them. The entire Void Collective fleet was paralyzed, their own size and connectedness turned against them. Next time, Astrid said as they flew back to the Crystal City, perhaps we should discuss your plan modifications before implementation. Says the woman who crashed her fighter through a battleship to reach me? Her galaxy eyes sparkled. Touché, little one. The victory celebration lasted for days. The Void Collective fleet retreated, their systems permanently compromised by Valkyrian crystal tech. The Council, impressed by both James's ingenuity and the effectiveness of human-Valkyrian cooperation, established formal diplomatic relations with Earth. But the greatest victory was personal. Standing in their special grove where they'd once hunted the behemoth, James looked up at Astrid, who had knelt to be closer to his level. The Council has offered me a position as Earth's permanent ambassador to the Valkyrians, he said. And? Her galaxy eyes searched his face. I told them I'd only accept if the First Blade was willing to put up with a small human on a permanent basis. Her smile outshone the crystal forest. I suppose I could make that sacrifice, she teased, then grew serious. You know this won't be easy. Our peoples have many differences to overcome. James reached up to touch her shimmering cheek. True. But I think we've proven that the biggest differences can lead to the greatest strengths when hearts align. My wise little human, she murmured, pulling him close. Although I do wish you'd stop calling yourself small. Oh. Her eyes twinkled with mischief and love. Indeed. After all, you're precisely the right size to be perfect for me. As they kissed among the singing crystals, James reflected that sometimes the universe's greatest gifts came in unexpected packages. He and Astrid had proven that love, like strength, had nothing to do with size, and everything to do with how perfectly two hearts could complement each other.